Well, I'm back. We have a second box of rocks now to unbox, and so we'll open it. It's off to my left here. Some of these are smaller specimens than in the last box. Oh, sometimes there's more than one specimen. This crystal here is a calcium sulfate crystal. It's from what's called the Great Salt Plain in western Oklahoma. It's out toward Alfalfa County and Grant County. And these grow in the sediments in the Great Salt Plain. And every year the state of Oklahoma Park and the state of Oklahoma moves the area where people are allowed to go dig for them. So there's sediment, generally this hourglass of sediment in the middle, and then the clear material here. They're called selenite crystals, a form of gypsum. And has a very odd bedfellow in this. This is a piece of basalt. That's an igneous rock. But what's interesting about this basalt is not that it's an igneous rock, but rather that it hosts elemental copper. This is from the Keweenaw Peninsula on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I brought home this basalt pebble or rock and had it cut and then polished. And so if you look closely, you can see the coppery glint, and that's elemental copper that's hosted within the basalt. And this material was mined through the 19th and much of the 20th century. Again, two different things from very different parts of the country. This is some muscovite mica, sheet mica, that comes from southern Maine, and it's very nice little mica crystals. You could peel them off, and I'd rather not, but they peel off just like it's sometimes called isinglass. It was used as an electrical insulator. It's used in toasters in the early part of the 20th century, and it was used to make windows in some carriages and such. Not from this size crystal, but from much larger ones, but it's kind of pretty. This is a well-worked, wave-worked pebble, or really cobble, of what's called Monterey shale, which is a very silica-rich material. This is from Santa Barbara County, California, and it's been thoroughly worked by waves. I think it even has some, it has something on. I don't know what that is. This looks like it's either iron, probably iron, but I thought it might be a tar stain, but it's not. Ah, this is just a concretion. It's extremely dense. It's really heavy. There's probably a lot of hematite in it. I'm not sure where this is from. I don't remember picking it up, but I clearly got it somewhere in my travels. But it's really dense. I've always wanted to cut it in half to see what's inside, but I've never found the occasion to do that. Three things in this. They're all from very different places. Boy, are they ever. There are three items. This is from the Turks and Caicos Islands in the Caribbean, and it contains it's mainly limestone, but there's some dolomite in here, and this could be some primary dolomite that formed from evaporating seawater within this recent carbonate sediment. Interesting place to go. The rock doesn't look too exciting, but it's interesting to find something this young that contains that mineral. This is a pisolite. I've had it cut in half. It's from a cave in northern Kentucky. What this forms from is moving water in the cave, and it forms a layer after layer of calcium carbonates put down on it. Make the layers show up. If I get this wet, you see the pisolite. So I found this in a channel in rock. It's kind of like a big bowl, and there were thousands of these things. They've just been forming and they're being tumbled around by the moving water and then having the calcium carbonate precipitate out on the nucleus, probably a little rock chip that's in there, pisolite. This is a ventifact, and it's probably one of the more interesting things because there's a lot to say about it. Number one, these are formed on beaches through the action of wind sandblasting harder material. So they're fairly rounded, but they often have these crater-like features on them because they get blasted by sand being blown by the wind. And it looks, in it kind of like the state of Virginia. And this was found on the Outer Banks, just south of Point Henry, Virginia. So I thought, well, what an interesting ventifact that is. This is indeed a piece of petrified wood. It's Eocene in age, so it's relatively young, and it's from the College Station, Texas area. Pretty common. These are so common there, people find them and then line them up to outline their driveway or flower beds. And this is just a small piece. Some of these pieces look like a tree limb or a pretty big chunk of a tree limb. Very interesting. Fossilized wood. And I actually have no idea what this is, but it's quite dense. So it may be something that's very rich in iron. I think I picked this up by the side of the road somewhere. It just was an amazingly dense material. It looked metallic. Thought it would be interesting. It is interesting. Still don't know what it is. And I've never taken the time to find out. These are some fossil ferns. They're from shale unit in western Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh, where they're pretty abundantly found. So actually one of the things that got me interested in the field of geology is right across from where I grew up. You could excavate in this shale outcrop and come up with a few blows of your hammer or work with your shovel, get out a whole bunch of fern fossils. They're real pretty and interesting and very common, but an interesting thing. Pennsylvania in age, they're upper Paleozoic. Okay, so this is from Maine again, in Casco County. It's a mixture of things, but probably the most prominent item in here are these dark crystals. Looks kind of shiny, kind of flat, like the muscovite mica that we had before, this one. But you can see it's very dark colored. This is biotitic mica. It contains high levels of magnesium and iron, or manganese and iron, rather, and hence is a darker color. It still has a mica-like structure, platey structure. And it's a mix of things in that rock, but the biotite is why I picked that up. It's a very interesting rock. The big chunk has a bit of a story to it. It's from Jamaica, not too far from Montego Bay, but this is Hope Gate dolomite, and it's from a quarry. And this was a chunk that was interesting because this is a material, it's carbonate material, it's karsted, it's had big fractures, and the fractures have been eroded away by the movement of fluid, and then material from the surface fell into the fracture. So that's what you see here is a fracture fill, these pebbles, and then carbonate cement around that that's filling a big crack in the Hope Gate dolomite. This would be the ground rock, a pretty fine-grained material, not particularly porous or permeable. This isn't particularly porous or permeable either, but it was a giant crack at one time. The guys who were operating the quarry were real characters. They were always trying to get us to buy them whiskey. I did buy them some beer. They seemed happy with that, and sandwiches. Then the guy wanted my watch, but they were very helpful in excavating this. And I carried this home all the way from Jamaica to Tulsa and had it cut in half so that we could look and see what that fracture fill looked like. And it lived most of its life as a bookend. This isn't really a rock at all, but it is interesting. This is a part of a structural geology experiment conducted by a friend of mine, Sandro Serra, at the Amoco Research Facility when it existed here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what Sandro was trying to do here, that's a piece of granite here, a piece of granite here. There's some metal strips, probably lead, and it's probably toxic as hell, but they were laid out flat, and he had a sort of some kind of woody material or composite material over top of that, and he had that under strong pressure and then pushed on the ends, and it shows the failure of these thin plates, thin alternating colored plates, when it came up against this. So he was trying to emulate what's called the thrust fault. So this is a structural geology, a physical structural geology experiment. Much of this work is no longer done like this, but it's done with numerical models. But this seems so graphic. And so when Sandro said he was going to throw it away, I said, "Can I have it?" He said, "Sure." So that's why it's in my little collection of stuff. Last item. And I have no idea what this is really. It's some sort of quartz rich material, a fairly complicated geometry to this. And I picked this up, I think in Tennessee many years ago. This is an interesting find, but it's a kind of one of these sort of mysterious things. It's clearly something that grew inside of another body, and then that other body's been eroded away. Interesting thing, fairly dense, not metallic, it's quartz. It's the end of that box. It's interesting, very interesting, interesting. This is an interesting find, but very interesting rock.